Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to an all new video. Today we'll be doing Mary Very. Alright, let's start this. Hey, slow the hell down, would ya? I shouted at my friend as he sprinted past the encroaching trees that surrounded us. We'd been walking for about half an hour and I think he was trying to get impatient. He practically had to drag me and my other friend out here to show us some abandoned house in the middle of nowhere. And he knew that it was getting dark. I wasn't about to get lost out here for the night, not with it being a Sunday. My mom would raise hell if I missed any more school, and my dad would probably beat me within an inch of my life, he being the principal and all. You guys should just speed the hell up, he replied. I want there to be enough time to show you to everything there is to see. I rolled my eyes. It's just some old house in the woods, Scotty. I guarantee you will be done looking around within 5 minutes of getting there. Oh yeah? Well, that's not what my brother told me, Scotty retorted, slowing down his run and breathing heavily. He said there's some crazy shit out here. Like what? My other friend Zach said. Scotty turned us, his smudged face barely visible in the fading daylight. I'm not going to tell you till we're there, so get a move on. The three of us continued to walk at the same pace, our shoes crunching in the dead leaves and that covered the forest floor. Upstate New York did not have the largest woodlands areas, but when it fell late and the sun set on these dead trees, the wood were scary as hell. I wasn't getting scared though. I knew that Scotty just wanted to play a prank on Zach and me. That that was all a ploy to get us to crap ourselves and run home screaming. His big brother was probably out there with some of his asshole friends ready to jump us. Can't you just tell us why this damn house is so important? Zach finally asked, breaking the silence that only the distant crickets had been interrupting. Fine, I'll tell you the story behind the place, and I will be there by the time I'm done, Scotty. Surrounded. Turning to us and walking backwards, I kinda was hoping he'd trip and fall flat on his ass. This used to be the house of Mary Very, he informed us, an airy tone in his voice. Who's Mary Very? Zach asked. Even I turned and looked at him in surprise. Every kid in town knew about Mary. She'd been the meanest old crow I've ever met. All the kids knew to stay away from her, because if you got too close, she'd smack you hard upside the head. No one would complain since she was old and all. Disregarding Zach's ignorance, I said, "Don't realize she lived out here. What makes you think this is her old house?" "Wait a minute. Who's Mary Very?" Zach demanded. Scotty ignored him too, addressing me instead. "I know it's her house, because my brother said it was." "You can't be that stupid," I said, unconvinced. He could have been spouting a load of shit when you told him that. "Who the hell is Mary Very?" Zach demanded. Wait. Oh yeah, who the hell is Mary Berry? Zach repeated, clearing his throat, annoyed over our lack of explanation. However, we just kept ignoring him. I know he was telling the truth, because right after he told me, my dad brought him into the other room and started yelling at him. I don't think he wanted me to hear, but I couldn't tell if he was telling my big bro not to tell me about it. That's how I knew he was on the up and up, Scotty explained. "Yeah, that's some real solid evidence right there," I laughed. "Guys!" Zack shouted on top of his lungs, sending an echo through the woods and causing a murderer of crows to fly out of the perch. The cows drowned in the crickets for a moment before they faded away with the birds. We both turned to him. "What? Who is Mary Berry?" he asked the final time. "Who the hell have you been? How the hell have you never heard of her?" Scotty asked. "I guess it was before my family moved here," he explained. "I'd forgotten that he hadn't moved to town until after the old coot bit the dust. Mary Very was the single most heartless bitch to ever live in the town. I once saw her kick a puppy that was walking by. She used to smack kids around with her cane for no good reason, and always threatened us to stay away from her house, even though no one knew where she lived." "Jesus, why would she do that?" Zach asked, amazed. "But if I know, the old bat did need a reason. She probably just did it because she could," Scotty replied. So why the hell are you dragging us to her house? I demanded. Exploring some dead woman's empty house was not how I wanted to spend my Sunday night. My friend snorted. Because now we can finally do what she always told us not to do. We can finally get on her lawn and into her house and break her windows and shit. It's the ultimate revenge. I gave him a deadpan stare. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. She's dead, you moron. Who cares about what we do to her house? You're missing the bigger picture. Scotty smiled. There's gonna be a reason she didn't want us coming around here. I bet there was some secret stash of treasure somewhere in that place. You know how old ladies don't trust banks to keep their money safe after the depression? She probably stuffed all her cash in the mattress or something. Raising an eyebrow, I asked, even if that was true, you didn't think the police found it already? Or the real estate people? Or even relatives? He went silent for a moment, contemplating it. Hey, I said it was worth a shot. Whoa! Scotty fell backward, tripping over a small garden fence. That landed on his ass. Zach and I couldn't help but laugh. You alright? I asked, holding a hand out. Scotty grasped it, and we both pulled. Yeah, I'm fine, he groaned. A bit embarrassed, but otherwise uninjured. All three of us looked at the poorly kept garden. No plants grew anymore. This was just popping up there and there in the dried up soil. We looked past the neglected, neglected garden to find an equally neglected lawn, which led up to a small broken down old house. Fucking I told you it was out of here, Scotty beamed victoriously, running past the garden and towards the house. Hold on, you dumbass, I shouted after him. Don't just barge in there. Scotty stopped and turned back to me. Come on, man, it's obviously empty. It doesn't mean we can just start splitting up, I warned. A pompous grin spread over his face. Oh, I wanted to crack him right there and then. You aren't scared, are you? He teased. I knew I was gonna come out sooner or later. You know what? Screw you, Scotty. Go fall into the basement and get stranded here for all I care. Scotty frowned. Fine then. I'll go and find the cash myself and you won't get a penny of it. With that, he ran to the front door, kicking it and disappearing into the house. Great, I thought to myself. Should we go after him in that case? I shook my head. That's just what he wants us to do. You realize he brought us out here to try and scare us, right? Yeah, I figured, he said, kicking the grass instead of following Scotty into the house. We walked the circumference of the yard. It seemed the perfect circle. There was a house in the middle, the garden south, and a small eddy used to shed the west. That wasn't a road or anything to be seen. How'd you get to the main door from here? I wondered out loud. I was thinking the same thing. The old lady couldn't have walked all the way to town from this place, right? Black asked. I have no idea, I replied. It didn't make any sense. I'd never seen Mary Very drive a car before, but she couldn't have walked through these woods every day, not at her age. The sun had almost completely set, and the only light came from the soft glow of gray clouds overhead. Suddenly I felt a strong feeling to leave the woods at the moment. It was the last place I wanted to be. We should go. Zach looked at me. What about Scotty? I turned to the house and cupped my hand over his mouth. Hey, dickhead. We're leaving in 10 seconds, so you better get your ass out of here if you don't want to walk through the woods alone. 15 seconds passed from the house. No sound came from the house. I turned and headed for the garden. You leaving? Like that? I told him 10 seconds, and then he gave him an extra 5. Hell yeah, I'm leaving. I almost made it to the garden before realizing I couldn't hear Zach's footsteps behind me. I turned once again to see him walking in the front door. What are you doing? I shouted. He turned to me, making sure he's okay. I slapped my hand in my face. He's just being an asshole. Let him walk alone. Zach shook his head. I'd rather find out he's being a prick than just leave him here. If he really got hurt, then he turned back at me in the darkness, swallowed him, and as he entered the house. Fuck, I cursed to myself. I couldn't feel like giving Scotty the satisfaction of going in there. But on the other hand, walking home by myself didn't sound like an attractive option either. After a minute of pacing the yard, I decided to swallow my pride and enter the front door. The inside of the house was just as welcoming as the outside had been. It was mostly empty, save a bed, couch, and a few other pieces of furniture. There was barely any light coming through the windows. The sun had already set. Remembering that I thought my cousin's old police flashlight had given me a while back, I pulled it out and clicked the button, fully revealing the empty room. The room I was and seemed to be living room connected to the kitchen. Nothing remained in the house except for aforementioned furnishings that had been left behind after Berry's death. That caused unease with me in the fact that Zek wasn't anywhere to be found. I walked in not 2 minutes after him, yet he still managed to hide somewhere. I was beginning to think he'd been cahoots with Scotty the whole time. Come on, guys, this isn't funny, I shouted louder than necessary. Nothing in the house slivered in reaction to my outburst. Then there was only 3 rooms that connected to the living room. All 3 were completely empty. There weren't even leftover items to be seen. After looking somewhere else, I finally found a single door in the wall of the kitchen area. It was closed, but it was only the piece that I haven't gotten. It's been the houses like it's worked before, and knew that there were 2 possibilities of what these vehicles are. Either I would open it up to a closet, or this, or descending stairs of a basement. I tensed up, turned the knob, and opened the door, ready for the 2 assholes to jump out. This didn't happen though. As I opened the door, only darkness greeted me. It was darkness, not merely the result of absence or of light, but as if hell itself were sitting right beyond their home. Only 3 steps of the stairway were visible to me, the rest fading into blackness. I pointed my flashlight downwards into the darkness abyss, almost laughing when I realized it hadn't died. It felt like as I waited to attempt on my outstretched hand. So I lowered my arm and turned and holding no illusions, I considered going down there without seeing some sort of light source. Turning away from the basement, it seemed like a mistake then going down. Because when I turned away from the door, I found myself facing an even more frightening sight. Standing across the kitchen was Mary Berry. Even with the lack of lighting, I could see her plain as day. She was wearing a white gown and long sleeves and some sort of bonnet that covered her head. She was also high-heeled shoes with white roses on top. I stood there, looking at her with a more of terror and confusion. She seemed to only regard with me hatred and anger. Her brow was furrowed, and her mouth contorted into a vicious sneer that gave off malicious intent. I could only feel her negativity radiating, squeezing my very soul with its oppression and suffocating me with a little effort. My breathing became short, sporadic, and my whole body shook violently, but I couldn't move otherwise. She stepped closer, not cautiously, but forbiddingly, like a lion who would stand against a threat to its den. In case I was an ignorant creature who stumbled into the lion's den, not realizing the danger and ultimately having my life taken by a pair of claws to the throat. Then when I realized something that scared me far worse than the fact that I was standing in the presence of a dead woman. What truly struck my heart was like a sledgehammer, was the fact that she wasn't looking at me, but past me. She was sneering at my presence, but the presence of something far more menacing. The force was beyond me. Just coming out of the bowels of the house, it must have climbed the steps from the basement. When I had my back turned and loomed over me, suppressing its presence, but far more threatening than an Etherland, ethereal, ethereal woman. Now Mary looked at me directly, and her expression changed from one to anger to one of sympathy. Eyes began to water, and for some reason, so did mine. We both stood there in a few seconds, crying over something I had yet to even to understand. I couldn't feel my flashlight in my hand anymore. I must have lost my grip on it, but I never heard it hit the ground. I didn't turn my face whatever monster stood behind me. Somehow I knew it wouldn't make a difference. Then I felt a hand over my shoulder. First I was just a firm grip, but then it squeezed hard, causing pain to shoot through my body. The pain was lasted a second or two, though, because I felt my head shake violently before my knees. Then I felt myself falling even further, plummeting into a pit of dark nothing. I no longer felt pain or fear, anything at all. I simply continued to fall, all the way down to the plane of existence until there was nowhere else to go. Then my conscience left me. I started out on the window of Mary Berry's old home. It was raining outside, and water droplets that landed on the windows slowly traveled down the glass, using various routes to get to the bottom. Outside there were police officers, EMTs, and reporters, all gathering around the small woods abode. Inside stood two sheriff deputies on the other side of me. Couldn't believe the psychopath was hiding out here this whole time. They'd been looking for him over 2 weeks after he escaped. A Tiraca with the Marcos brothers, one said, staring out the window. The police cruiser took a small road out of the forest. I hadn't seen them before. The back seat was occupied. Yeah, Richie Davis. It was a prisoner for 3 counts of attempted murder, the other replied. Looks like he was holding up in Mary Mary's old basement. But the boys came exploring. Did the investigators put it together? He shrugged. More or less. Richie didn't really keep anything to himself. He said the first boy entered the house alone when he strangled him to death and dragged him down to the basement. Apparently he was down there cutting the first boy up when the second kid walked in. Richie snuck back upstairs and punched the kid in the face so hard knocked him out cold. Then he quickly brought him down so he can finish up the first one. Jesus, the other officer commented. Then the third boy came in, and Richie cracked his skull open with a metal flashlight. The sick fuck said he only wanted to knock him out, but he was still living when he cut him into him. He didn't make movie killers as twisted as this wacko. Can't believe the only 40 years the first time he threw him in jail. Well, that's not gonna happen this time. 2 kids dead, one in the hospital, a half mutilated corpse. They'll give him a needle for sure. After this would have been even worse, and those hunters hadn't heard the screaming, stormed in the prick, and held him in the gunpoint until the responders could get there. It's weird though. The hunters said they heard a woman screaming. The one pointed out. Yeah, that's a little odd, the other replied. No doubt about it. The one nodded. Come on, Captain. Come on. Captain wants us to make a statement. The 2 officers left me by the window and went out to the address by the growing crowd of reporters who gathered outside. I turned away from the window, once again facing Mary Mary. She looked at me with sorrow, but also a slight of happiness. I was surprised that no sadness had taken me. I didn't feel much of anything. Scotty stood next to Mary, giving me an apologetic look. Must have felt like it was all his fault. I smiled at him reassuringly, then took one last look outside as 2 body bags were wheeled over a waiting ambulance. Mary opened the basement door where Scotty had met his end. But the basement was no longer there. Now it was a room of immense light, more powerful than any light I'd ever seen. Scotty completely gone, Mary turned back to me, smiling and reaching her hand out. I took it, hesitantly at first, but then, when with conviction, she gave my hand a soft but confident squeeze, eliminating any remaining doubts I had. Whatever role she played while she was alive, I knew that now she was my guide, here to escort me someplace else. I walked to her side and returned her warm smile with one of my own. Then together we stepped through the door, leaving the world behind and entering another. Well, that was really something. A murderer. It sucks what happened to the kid though. But alright guys, this is Mary Very. I'm going to have this site in the link in the description below. Please like, favorite, and subscribe. But this is Potato Productions, and I'm out.